Okay, so good morning everyone. Welcome to another episode of Data Science Clinic. Let me quickly check my settings. So today will be a quick one. We're just going to cover which is a better tool for data analysis. So this is a very common and popular question that I always get from our students, and also every time when I give a talk that's more technical. Um, let's talk about R versus Python as the programming tools that we always use in data science. First of all, you need to understand why do we need programming language? A lot of time people were asking like, hey Dr. Lau, why are we still learning programming language? Like, there are a lot of tools, there are a lot of no code movement. People have been using other tools, like for example Orange, or if the companies have a little bit of budget, they'll be using SAS. But why do we really need to learn programming language? I think the fundamental reason is you need to understand programming language is just a tool, and is the only way that human can communicate with the machines right now, right? So if you don't learn how to speak programming language, how to code in let's say Python or R, then eventually if you believe that AI is going to replace your jobs, those who do not know programming language eventually will be replaced, because you are slowly fading out from the ability of able to communicate with computers, or the ability to command the computers even, right? And from a more practical perspective, number one is we need to learn programming language because we need to know how to automate those boring tasks. There are a lot of tasks in data science that are boring, repetitive, and mundane. For example, cleaning data, uh, crawling data from web pages. You need to go through e-commerce website and you want to scrape hundreds of the products information from Lazada, eBay, or Shopee, and you can't really use Excel to do that for you, or any other tools that help you to do that. And another thing about this is, for example, you want to crawl information from Facebook or Twitter API, you can't do that too. I'm not saying those are boring, but the process are boring. Let's say you have 100 Instagram accounts that you want to go through and download the pictures from there. You wouldn't want to do it manually, and you can't do that with Orange or Excel. So the first key reasons that you need to learn programming language is because you want to automate the boring tasks. And the second reason of doing that is you want to be able to handle large data sets. Now, a lot of time we will be, when it comes to analyzing data analysis, the first thing that came to your mind is definitely a tools like Excel, for example. Excel is good when you are handling structured data like spreadsheets, so you have well-defined rows and columns. But the downside is Excel can only support up to 1 million over rows. Okay, that's the maximum, and 256 column. And that is the, or I'll call it the physical limits by design of Excel. But the truth is, if you have ever used Excel to try to process a data set that has, well, let's say 50 to 100 columns, right? Let's say about that, and you have more than 150 or 200,000 rows, you will realize that it's a nightmare. Yeah, no matter how good is your computer, it takes a long while to open the file, and even every time when you try to recalculate the entire spreadsheet, it will take forever, etc. Okay, so when you have large data sets or even unstructured data sets, right, you need to use programming language to help you to handle them. And the third one is building machine learning models. Right now, if you were to build a complex machine learning models, not even just deep learning one, if we're just talking about a basic one, let's say decision trees, or just some more complicated SVM support vector machines, you need you need programming languages. And even that is not enough, right? You need some packages from the programming language itself. So building machine learning models is definitely a task that can only be done by using programming language. And last but not least, deploy production application. So when you have finally built your models, you want to take that into your production environment. So you want to use it. Let's say you have a recommender systems that you have built, and you want to show them in your applications. All right, in your final apps, and let's say you have Netflix. So what you need to do is you need to turn your machine learning code into some sort of like an API, or at least you need to write the recommendations back to a SQL server, and then your Netflix apps, your movie apps is then able to pull those data from your production application. And say for example you are building an app like Grab or Uber, you need to calculate the fare, the prices from one location to another locations using your machine learning model, and these require programming language skills as well. Okay, so these are the four main motivations and reasons why we need to use a programming language. So next up, let's look at the comparison between R and Python. So let me give you a quick recap on what R and Python is, right? R is a programming language that's mainly used for data analysis and statistics, and Python is a more Swiss knife like programming language. So we can use it for development, we can use it for deployment, and we can use it for production. But the objective of using Python in data science is definitely clearer than R, because you can only use R for analysis and statistics. R is not that good for deployment. Like if you want to take R into to build R around a web applications, it's pretty hard. Yeah, you need to use Shiny, and it's not quite customizable. It's just I would say it's just a emergency resort lah. Yeah, and the second one is the primary users. So Scholar and R&D are the primary users of R, whereas in Python the primary users are programmers and developers. So what happened is R is mainly used and taught in academic environment like universities and mainly universities and research facilities, I would say. But Python is used everywhere, from scientists, okay, not just data scientists, but other scientists from other faculties, like for example physics, biology, chemistry, they use Python as well. And for the other developers, right, they use Python heavily to build web applications, for example Django and Flask. And when it comes to flexibility, I think these are pretty similar. They both are equally good. So R has a lot of easy to use libraries, and Python has a lot of easy to construct new models from scratch, for example matrix computation and optimizations. R is not that bad in matrix calculations as well. It's just that there are a lot of libraries and computations method that we can borrow from Python. And the next one is learning curve. Now this is an interesting one, because R is often known as the harder to learn language because of the syntax. The way that R is used, right? The way that we write our code in R is definitely not so intuitive compared to other programming language, because it's really a data analysis and statistics language. And if you don't have a good solid foundations on statistics, right, you'll find it difficult. Yeah, like the notation that they use, because they borrow a lot of those ideas from statistics. Whereas in Python, we say that the learning curve is more linear and smooth, because you can do easy things from the beginning, and then you slowly increase the difficulty. It wouldn't jump that high compared to R. So this is another reason. And then the next one is the integration. So R is, if you need to run R, right, you have to run R locally using the R runtime. And for Python, similarly, you need to run within a runtime, but is more tightly integrated with your applications, whether is it with your mobile applications or with your Python application. And the next task is easy to get primary results. So what happened is, if you use R, because it's designed for data analysis and statistics, so you can easily get those results pretty quickly. in how do I put it in words? Yeah, primary results, I would say, right? Because a lot of those things that we do in data science, like for example, descriptive statistics, etc., these are pretty common tasks. So what I meant here is that when you want to get primary results from those common tasks, you can do it easily. And whereas for Python, you have a lot of algorithms. So it's in a by now you should have a feeling that Python is a stronger programming language. So when it is a stronger programming language, right, it's good to for algorithms deployment, because a lot of the for loops, for example, and list comprehension is available only in Python. And next one is IDE, Integrated Data Development Environment. So this is the tool that you use to write programming code. For R, by default, the de facto tool that we use is RStudio, and Python we use Python or IPython Notebook. Now there's a difference between IPython or Jupyter Notebook versus Google Colab. For R, you can also use Jupyter or Jupyter Notebook if you need to. You just need to install the library, the runtime support. And for Python, right, we need to use. We can also use Google Colab. Yeah, Google Colab support Python. Yeah, only. And the next one is important packages and libraries. So there are a lot of good libraries in R. We have tidyverse, ggplot, caret, and zoo. Whereas in Python, we have pandas, scipy, scikit-learn, tensorflow, caret. We have a lot of deep learning packages, analysis packages, both in R and Python. So I think this one, R will have an advantage. Yeah, so I would say R wins in the package and library section. And the disadvantages is slow, high learning curve dependencies between library. Yeah. So what is a common problem in R is that there are a lot of dependencies between library, and you need to learn them. It's not just like calling another libraries. Whereas, like I mentioned earlier, in R, the libraries is not as rich. You don't have as many options, so it's relatively simpler. But of course, you can do less things. But as a beginner, I don't think this is going to affect you in any manners. Yeah, so most of the libraries, let's say tidyverse and ggplot2 for R, and also most of the libraries like pandas, scikit-learn in Python is and even NumPy, right? They are sufficient to handle your tasks, yeah, your day-to-day operation tasks. And let's look at the advantages. So the one of the most important part, like everybody loves about R, is that graphs are made to talk. R makes it beautiful. But in Python, you need to use a third-party graph library, like for example, Seaborn. And R has a large catalog for data analysis, but I think this is I don't think this is a good news or bad news for beginners. From a beginner's perspective, is that you might have a lot of options at the beginning of your learning curve, so you need to spend some time trying to figure out which one is the most popular and the one that industry standards, and you can slowly increase from there. Whereas for Python, you are more you need to be more well versed in your mathematical computation, right? And then GitHub interface, I think this one is because has a GitHub interface out of the box. And let's continue from R here, right? And R Markdown is a special Markdown language that is available to R only. And also, last but not least, you have Shiny, which is a tool that turns your R code into a web application. Now, whereas in Python, you have Jupyter Notebook. Notebook helps to share data with colleagues. You can, as I said, you can use Jupyter Notebook with R as well. The R in Jupyter or Jupyter is actually referring to R programming language, and you can use it for mathematical computations. The strength of Python comes from the ability to deploy it to production environment and code readability. Python is a very beautiful programming language. It takes away a lot of the conventional programming language stuff, for example, open and close brackets. So when you write a function, you don't really have to put them into a code block. It's all done by using indentation. And speed, now both in execution speed and also coding speed, I think Python hands down win in this department, because R is definitely slower when it comes to handling large data set. But again, for beginners, you shouldn't be worried too much about that. And also a lot of built-in functions in Python, that will be another good plus point. So my verdict for you as a beginner, right, or even as a senior data scientist, I would say, okay, let's go with senior data scientist first. As a senior data scientist, I don't think you need to make any choice. Like you actually need to pick up both. Because like during my career, or even when I was studying, right, in uni we need to learn R, but when you go to the industry, most of the people are using Python. So there are some cases where you don't have to integrate your analysis or integrate your model with the production environment. That's a good opportunity to use R, in fact. And for beginners, right, learn Python first, because the language is easy to pick up, the language is beautiful, and there are a lot of available codes and libraries out there that will help you to do a lot of things. And it's like buying yourself an insurance in case you need some other functions, or in case one day you decide to write less data science code, but you are more interested in building your own products, or you want to build a website, or you want to write more APIs. I think Python is still a good language to learn at the beginning of your career when you first enter data science, so that you have a lot of options and keep your options open. Okay, all right, so that is a little bit of quick data science clinic for today. Let me see, is there any questions on YouTube? Comments, yeah. I'll be here for another minute or two in case you have any questions. Alright, if there's no further question, thank you very much for joining me in today's data science clinic. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.